So I've read the comments and y'all want to learn how to shoot pictures like this, how to get clean video like this, or even learn how to clone yourself. I'm trying something very different. This is day 1 of editing week. Throughout the next 7 days, I'll be creating a new tutorial every day. I'll be covering everything from how to perfect your photos, videos, sound effect musics, transitions, graphics, and a whole lot more. And might even have a popular special guest to show you how we created our most viral content from scratch. So if you're an aspiring creator or feel like you're lacking knowledge to just start, after this week, you'll have everything you need and no more excuses. Now, I'm already aware that I've gotten most of my following from my photos and unique film presets, so I figured it's best to probably start the week off with how to shoot and edit your photos just like mine from scratch. Now, a lot of beginners tend to get caught up with gear and what they need for photos rather than what they need to actually take good photos. That's like wanting to learn how to drive, but not doing so until you own a Ferrari. Doesn't really make much sense, does it? Buying a ton of expensive camera gear is not going to make you a better photographer. Now, what will is learning composition and lighting. If you get these two things down, you'll never take a bad photo again. And for my beginners, to nail composition, you first have to learn the rule of thirds. This 3x3 grid is a guideline for how to angle our camera. It doesn't matter if your subject is a building or a person. If you use this grid to help compose your shot, you will instantly start to see a major improvement in your photos. Now, our next step is lighting, and lighting is honestly so in-depth, it probably deserves its own video. But to keep y'all here with me and to break it down very simply, if you're shooting outside during the day, then direct sunlight will probably be your worst enemy. Most people would probably assume the opposite, but with that direct sunlighting, you're getting very harsh lighting, a blown out sky, and some pretty nasty shadows. Overcast and cloudy days are personally my favorite, but if you are shooting outside during direct sunlight, you first want to shoot with your camera facing away from the sun. Tip 2 is maybe picking up an ND filter, which is kind of like sunglasses for your lens, which will make it possible to get that blurry background without overexposing. And if you happen to be shooting at nighttime, don't be afraid to use your flash. Most imperfections can be fixed with editing, but your job as a photographer is to light the image the best you can in camera, so you really don't have to do too much work in the edit. Now, when it comes to most digital cameras like this one here, you'll usually have some type of built-in light meter that lets you know when you're exposed. And of course, basically on all smartphones, you get automatic exposure. Even if you are shooting on the newest iPhone, I will always recommend to manually adjust your exposure settings, because sometimes you might have to go against what your camera is telling you. I mean, you might be trying to achieve a dark, moody vibe, and it's pretty tough to get that if you're not underexposing your photos. So always be mindful when shooting what you want the final photo to look like, because it will make your job shooting that much easier. Now, we are about to move on to editing, but before we do that, I do just want to talk about angles, because there's one particular angle that I've been using since I started getting good at shooting, and all you really need is a wide angle lens, or if you're on a phone, the 0.5x filter. And what you want to do as the photographer is get real low to the ground and angle your camera up towards your subject. Now, this is where the 3x3 grid comes in, because I'd say for your photo to look the best and to not have too much ground or sky in the image, I like to align the second horizontal line onto the eyes or head of my subject. And by just doing that, you'll almost always get a banger photo. The last step of my process is the editing, and obviously this isn't needed for any casuals, but if you are trying to create content or do this as a job, you'll need an eye-catching aesthetic, and this is exactly how to do so. It all starts with Lightroom, and for all my mobile users, don't worry, there is a free app with essentially all the same features. And honestly, there are a few different ways to do this, the easiest being with presets. Now, I personally have a ton that I offer on my website, both free and paid. Before we get into that one, I think it is important to learn the basics and know how to edit from scratch. It all starts with the basic corrections/light tab. This is where you're simply trying to correct your image so it looks exactly like it did in person. Sliders here are pretty self-explanatory, but to go through them, exposure is affecting the light of your entire image. Contrast will be darkening your blacks and raising your white. Highlights affect only the bright parts, where shadows affect only the dark parts. And for the blacks and whites, it only affects the pure black and white in your image. Moving on to the color tab, this is similar, where you're just trying to correct your image, getting the proper temperature, tint, and of course vibrance in your colors. Where it really starts to get a bit difficult is in this curves tab, but to make it as simple as possible for y'all, we're gonna break it down into 5 different points. The first one starts in the middle, and dragging this point up and down will be affecting the midtones or your skin tones in the image. Now for the second point here, we are affecting the shadows, and of course if we go up on the other side, this will be affecting the highlights. Finally, for the 2 points in the corner, the bottom left corner is affecting your blacks. So if you want your blacks to look almost gray, you would lift this part up. And obviously on the other side of the curve, this point would be affecting your whites. Now that may have been a lot, but the most used curve and most effective curve that I think every photographer uses is this S shape here. And what this does here is add a nice pop of contrast to your image, all while giving that nice fade to your blacks, which almost gives that filmic look. For the color mixer, this is where you can dial in each and every one of your colors. You can achieve some really dope looks with these sliders, but if you do too much, you can definitely break your image. One of the last tabs that I usually go through is this color grading one, and honestly there's no really step-by-step for what you should do here. I just like to feel it out by vibe and do whatever I think looks best to my eye. This usually involves me just testing the slider out and trying a few different things till I get something that I like. Then finally, I might add some grain and of course some sharpening in our effects tab to get my signature film look. And if I'm being honest, this does take time, not to mention a whole lot of trial and error, but with practice, you'll be banging this out in no time. Now, if you want to transfer all the hard work and settings that you've done on this photo here onto all of your other photos so you don't have to redo this process, you can easily turn this edit into a preset like this and instantly apply them onto any photo that you want. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have a ton available on my website, and if you end up checking out with one, you will get a download link. Once you import that file into Lightroom, it will look like just a regular old image. What you want to do is create a preset from this, and once you name it, you are free to apply this preset onto any photo that you want. Most of the time, it will be almost perfect, and you'll only need a minute or two tweaking your basic corrections. But once you've done that, you'll have pictures that are as good or even better than mine. Now, I hope I didn't give you guys too much information because I will be back with day 2 of editing week tomorrow. But if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and share with a friend so they too can join us on this amazing journey.